and we're pleased now to be joined on our set at USC by the best-selling author Dennis Prager. His most recent book, Still the Best Hope, Why the World Needs American Values to Triumph. Mr. Prager, is this about exporting American values?
Well, we first have to import them. That's the problem. But yes, it is about exporting. That's why the subtitle is about the world. People need guidance to be good people. We're not born good. This is, by the way, one of the basic differences between left and right. Left-wing ideologies tend to believe we're born basically good. Conservatives understand that we're not. And it's a huge source of the differences between left and right. So if you understand, and my preoccupation is with understanding why there's so much evil in the world. Since I was a child, that's always preoccupied me. I take no credit for it. But it has been. You need ideas to guide people's lives. You need, if you will, ideology. And there are three competing ideologies in the world today. Islamism, or Islam, but I'll explain the difference in a moment, and I do in the book. Leftism and Americanism. Those are the three competing ideas. Two of them are proselytizing. One is not proselytizing, Americanism. And I define Americanism very simply, not simplistically, in the book. That's why there's a coin on the cover. It occurred to me in I don't know, about 25 years ago, emptying my pockets at night. I looked at the coins that I had emptied, and sure enough, it was amazing. There they were. The American value system on every coin. Liberty and God we trust, e pluribus unum. That is applicable to all societies in the world, and I can explain them obviously. What I call the American Trinity, those three values, is the greatest value system ever devised for liberty and goodness.
How do you define leftism?
Leftism, well, that's the thing, as I point out, and that's the largest single part of the book. Leftism has characteristics, and it begins, for example, with the belief that the greatest vehicle to goodness is the state. That the state is the great, as I said, vehicle to goodness. That you rely on the state as much as possible for the welfare of people. It begins with a belief that economics explains human behavior, not values, so that the idea that poverty causes crime is a sort of dogma on the left. We who do not subscribe to leftism, but to Judeo-Christian values, to, I think, common sense, know that the basic cause of crime, certainly in our society, is a malfunctioning conscience. People don't rape because of poverty. People aren't killing because of poverty. They're killing because they stink. That's why. And we can't say that. It's just unbelievable. You can say Madoff stinks. People could say everything terrible, and they should, about Bernie Madoff, a white-collar criminal. But you can't say that the average rapist and murderer is of that level. No, it's not really him. It's his parenting. It's poverty, and so on. So the blaming of outside forces for human evil is a very deep part of leftism. The materialist view of life is part of secular leftism. In fact, leftism is by and large opposed to a strong religiosity, because Marx said that the obstacle to revolution is religion, because religion says, try to be happy in the world that exists, and leftism says, make utopia here. Religion says utopia is in the next life. So those are part of the characteristics, and they're all developed in the book.
Dennis Prager is our guest for the next hour. If you'd like to call in and talk with him, the numbers are up on the screen. 202 is the area code. 585-3885 for those of you in the East and Central time zones. 585-3886 if you live in the Mountain or out here in the Pacific time zone where we are located today. If you can't get through on the phone lines and would like to send a tweet, @BookTV is our Twitter handle. And you can also go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/BookTV. You'll see right there, you can post a comment under Mr. Prager's name. It's listed right there on the top of the page. Now, Mr. Prager, in Still the Best Hope, in the chapter Why the Left Succeeds, or the part of the book, Why the Left Succeeds, favored groups are rarely to blame. you say, about certain issues. What do you mean?
Oh, well, if, for example, the most obvious being racial minorities. If they rape, if they kill, it is because of racism and poverty. During the LA riots that took place in this very city, I was a talk show host then as well, and I said, I'll never forget why I said it. An local NBC reporter said, here I am at the corner of two streets in where the riots were happening, and there I see a black gentleman throwing stones at drivers. And I thought, the man throwing stones is not a gentleman. The word I can't use on national television, but the word that comes to mind is not gentleman. And why did he say gentleman? He wouldn't have said, hey, there's a white gentleman wearing a hood burning a cross. Would he have said that? Of course not. The left of center doesn't have the courage and doesn't have the ideology that permits it to blame evil on evildoers. If the evildoer is black, it's white's fault. If the evildoer is white, it's white's fault. You name it. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict is another example. Don't blame the Palestinians. After all, what they're doing is understandable in light of how evil Israel is. I mean, by the way, that's a very significant example of the upside-down moral world of the left, that Israel is now increasingly the villain in that conflict. In the history of the world, there has not been a war between a free society and an unfree society. Never. It's either free and unfree or two unfree societies. This is the first time in world history that I know of that the free society is blamed for a conflict. That's thanks to the left. Israel is the villain, not the Palestinians, half of whom vote for a genocidal ideology to prevail. Leftism is an upside-down moral world. I say this with sadness because a lot of people who subscribe to it are decent people, which incidentally is unique to us. We constantly understand there are good people with whom we differ. I have never heard a prominent leftist say conservatives are good people. People who believe that same-sex marriage is wrong and that we should continue to keep the male-female marriage. They're not doing this from hate. They have sincere beliefs in this regard. They can't say that because if we're not demonized, then we can't be fought. We are fought by demonization, what I call SIXERB: sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, and bigoted. That's what we are, and that is how they prevail. We're not battling ideas, we're battling bad people. We think they're wrong, they think we're bad.
Dennis Prager, in here you write about the left-wing takeover of universities, and you give as an example the University of California, San Diego. And you list some organizations that the university has. And I just want
You want to read it?
Yeah, I'm going to read the list.
It's awesome. By the way, this is from Heather McDonald at the Manhattan Institute, and I give her the credit. Go ahead.
The Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. The Chancellor's Diversity Office. The Associate Vice Chancellor for Faculty Equity. The Assistant Vice Chancellor for Diversity. Faculty Equity Advisors, the Graduate Diversity Coordinators, the Staff Diversity Liaison, the Undergraduate Student Diversity Liaison, the Graduate Student Diversity Liaison, the Chief Diversity Officer, the Director of Development for Diversity Initiatives, the Office of Academic Diversity and Equal Opportunity, the Committee on Gender Identity and Sexual Orientation Issues, the Committee on the Status of Women, the Campus Council on Climate, Culture, and Inclusion, the Diversity Council, the Cross-Cultural Center, the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender Resource Center, and the Women's Center. As you say, that is a left-wing seminary, not a university.
That's right.
Should not these institutions exist?
Not one of them. They have nothing to do with teaching. It has to do with indoctrination and ideology. Look, this is another tragedy. I was raised in the Jewish tradition where the teacher was honored like a parent. I'm serious, that you are taught. I was raised a religious Jew. I still am religious, though not Orthodox. I've written 2 books on Judaism, and I'm a columnist for the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles. So I'm pretty steeped in my religion. And we were taught to respect teachers exactly like parents. In fact, the Hebrew root for Torah teacher and parent is the same. That's how holy the teaching role is in my tradition.